lista, pero por ahora vamos a empezar. Buenas tardes a todos y todas ustedes una vez más. Este es su programa Líderes del Futuro. Welcome back. This is your show, Líderes del Futuro, here on KBBF 89.1 FM and on the web at kbbf.org. Y ahorita tengo el privilegio de tener a la doctora Kimberly, quien es la directora de Santa Rosa High School. Y luego tenemos al señor Tim, quien es uno de los directores de educación para el distrito de Santa Rosa. Y tenemos a la asistente directora Norma, quien va a asistir con la traducción también, para que así no escuchen nada más una voz en español. And so, welcome again, Kim. You are the principal at Santa Rosa High School, and welcome again, Tim. Kim and Tim here. And you are a director of education. I'm just making titles. I told you this was going to happen. K-12 over at Santa Rosa City Schools, and then Norma is the assistant principal. And if not, I just gave her a new title, and hopefully you'll pay her better after that. Over there at Santa Rosa High School as well. So one of the things that I think we need to talk about is how are things going on for class of 2021. What are we seeing over there at in the district itself?
Raphael, thank you so much for having us this evening to talk about this intervention for the class of 2021. I think it would be best if we sort of start from an acknowledgement that we are very clear distance learning has been a challenge for all of our students, and it has been a big challenge for the class of 2021. And as we listen to feedback from parents, as we've talked to our students, as we have spoken to teachers and staff members who are working with our students, it became very clear that we needed to come up with some additional interventions that would support our students individually. And that is why we're calling it the individual graduation plan, is because it is designed to create two new options that previously Santa Rosa City Schools didn't offer graduating seniors, to really look at where they are credit-wise, look at what their plans are after high school, and develop a plan that is going to work with them and those goals to be able to graduate in May, at the end of May, with a high school diploma. And this was a combined effort between, initially, the idea was combined effort. Started at Santa Rosa High School. My vice principal, Andrea Correa, and I were sitting down and having a fairly passionate discussion about this concern and this worry about our seniors. How are we going to help them? We knew that students were failing. We know that they're struggling. We know that they're anxious. What could we do? How could we support? And out of those discussions, we started looking at the basic graduation requirements for the state of California. And we started looking at the requirements for students to go to a California university or a college. And we asked ourselves, well, what if we looked at the requirements that those students have made already, and we helped them devise a plan where they could, perhaps if they need it, lessen that load going into the spring semester. And so this intervention was born out of that idea. We worked very closely with teaching and learning at our district office. Tim was a big part of it. And we also worked very closely with our district counselors to come up with a plan that would work. And it's really exciting. It's new. I don't think this has ever happened before. And we don't want to let kids out of school early. We're not looking to say, here's your free pass, please go forward. What we're trying to do is say, for some of our students, if anxiety is an issue, if their families are suffering and they need to look at working, or they really have had trouble catching up on credits and are low on credits, how are we going to work with that student individually to help them transition after they get out of high school?
Ok, entonces la pregunta que le hice originalmente a la doctora es, ¿qué es lo que está sucediendo con las estudiantes que se van a graduar este año del que viene en el 2021. Entonces, la señorita Norma va a hacer la traducción.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Soy Norma Vázquez y voy a traducir la información de parte de la directora Kimberly Clissold. Ella dice que tocante el aprendizaje a la distancia, hemos escuchado al personal de nuestra escuela, a los maestros, a los padres y a los estudiantes. Y de eso hicimos el plan individual para graduación para los estudiantes de la clase del 2020-21. Y en este plan consideramos las ideas que tuvimos en las juntas. Y una de esas juntas fue con la vicedirectora, la señora Correa. So, comenzamos esa discusión y platicamos sobre todas las cosas que están impactando o que impactaron a nuestros estudiantes. Y trabajando con el Teaching and Learning, el programa del distrito y los consejeros del distrito, hicimos este plan, comenzamos a mirar cuáles eran los estándares, cuáles eran lo que necesitaban los estudiantes para entrar a las universidades y a los colegios y al graduarse de acuerdo de las leyes del estado de California. Entonces tomamos mucho en cuenta. Tomamos en cuenta que unos estudiantes están trabajando durante estos tiempos, otros tienen otros tipos de dificultades como ansiedad o tienen otras cosas que fueron impactados.
And so it sounds to me like you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what needs to happen to support the students. One question that I have is, what is attendance like these days for students? I know personally at Santa Rosa Junior College in my classes, I would have students who would log in this last semester and 10 minutes later, they lost their Wi-Fi and I just lost them and they're trying to come back. Sometimes they would text me, sometimes they would email me, apologizing like, we have 5 people in the household trying to connect and it's impossible. Maybe I can connect with another student to get the notes, or can I make an appointment with you and go over some of the, those 20 minutes that I miss in the lecture? What is it like over there at Santa Rosa School District at this moment?
I'm going to give a short answer and then I'll let my two colleagues from a school site answer. First of all, good evening to all the listeners and thank you, Rafael, for having us on tonight. And we want to wish well to all the families in our community for the upcoming winter school break. And we hope they're healthy and well and get some time to rejuvenate. So you just laid out some very clear reasons why attendance can be problematic. Our district worked really hard to get hotspots to students. But even then there was a lag, of course, because there's just specific instances where things don't go as smoothly as you would like. Even then you can have students with the appropriate equipment, but like you said, there could be too much bandwidth kind of need at their home. And then we have lots of students who've told us they're taking care of younger siblings and they're really pitching in to help the family. And so that becomes a tension of how do I do everything? And so attendance is impacted by this situation, but we have a robust team at Santa Rosa City Schools at our district office that works with our school site to basically re-engage and try to contact students and get them back into the learning. So unfortunately, attendance, like everywhere across the state, is impacted by COVID, but we are also responding as quick as we can to provide the technology and the support to engage students as much as possible. I'll stop there and let Norma kind of recap that.
Ok, muchas gracias, Tim. So, de acuerdo a la asistencia a la distancia, sobre la distancia del aprendizaje a la distancia, como cualquier otra escuela, hay ciertas cosas que debemos de tener en cuenta, ¿verdad? Varias de las familias tienen que utilizar el internet con otras personas durante el mismo tiempo. Eso es algo que sí nos impacta, ¿verdad? Y a los estudiantes les impacta. Sí hay también otras personas, otros estudiantes aprendiendo al mismo tiempo en el hogar. Lo que nosotros estamos tratando de hacer de parte del distrito de Santa Rosa City Schools es tratar de apoyar a todos nuestros estudiantes en la mejor manera que podemos. En veces eso viene en cuenta de darles la tecnología, ¿verdad? En prestarles los Chromebooks o en prestarles el hotspot o el internet para que ellos puedan tener ese acceso. Y luego también, señor Vázquez, yo también quiero dar mi punto de vista de Santa Rosa High School. Yo trabajo con muchos de los estudiantes y nosotros en la high school tenemos un equipo que cuando los estudiantes están ausentes y no están yendo a sus clases, este equipo llama a las casas, ¿verdad? No es una voz grabada, sino es una persona que realmente está haciendo esa llamada al hogar. Y les hacemos preguntas, ¿tienen internet? ¿Tienen su Chromebook? ¿Hay un problema? Y tratamos de averiguar para apoyar a esos estudiantes y a esas familias. Y sí, en veces es difícil, pero siempre estamos listos para ayudar y apoyar a nuestros estudiantes.
Definitivamente. Y una vez más, eso es importante en esta situación, porque si los estudiantes no ven que hay interés del distrito, de la escuela, del maestro, de otra persona, entonces tal vez se siente que no importa a alguien si están participando o no. And so it's really, really important, I think, if, as you mentioned, if somebody's actually calling as opposed to an auto dialer that is calling and saying, you didn't show up to school again. Okay, the student may interpret it as I'm in trouble rather than is somebody trying to assist me, because that is essential in this situation. And so can you tell us what type of support, therefore, are you offering to the students to try and get as many as possible, if not all, obviously, to graduate in 2021? ¿Nos podría dar una idea de qué tipo de apoyo ahora están proveyendo entonces a estudiantes para asegurarse que se van a graduar el 2021?
So, Rafael, I think that, I really appreciate that you kind of shared your experience of what it's like to be an instructor and how your students have struggled with equity of access, being able to get on Wi-Fi and have it be stable. That is something we have experienced with our students as well. And similarly, we have seen, students are contacting their teachers and saying, hey, I'm having trouble, and teachers are working with them. But we also have another group that, we are still trying to get motivated and engaged. And that is the group that in the last part that I think you were speaking to, which is that's really individual. You're not going to catch that group with an email, a mass email, or with a mass dialer. That is a one-to-one phone call. And that is something that we have had our staff at Santa Rosa doing almost all year long. And I think we're going to keep doing it because there are still some students that we're trying to get engaged and get them motivated and get them on track. And if we need to, we, have them come down to the school and everybody's masked up, and, we show them how to use a Chromebook, and we make sure that they've got materials, pens, pencils, paper, they have all their books. And so it is much like the individual graduation plan. We have realized very quickly, very consistently that this is going to be ongoing, that there is no one size fits all, that we really have to work with our students and our families where they're at, and that where they're at can shift. And it is going to keep shifting because our community is going through so much. Our families and our students are going through so much. So that's really the intent behind a lot of the, especially this particular intervention for our class of 2021, is that it can remain responsive and adaptive and work with our individual students to help them make sure they graduate and that they have a plan. And we're using the same premise with our other students. It's not perfect. We're going to keep refining. We're going to keep working. I really encourage, I really appreciate when my students email me. I get a lot of emails now from students who are saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, or hey, could you look into this? And I appreciate that feedback. And I think I believe our teachers and our staff too, as well. So I hope that communication steps up, because that's how we're going to keep designing better interventions and reaching our students.
Okay, I'll go ahead and translate that for Dr. Clissold. So la doctora Kimberly Clissold dice que el apoyo no nada más es necesariamente sobre utilizar el Internet y que funcione en el hogar, sino de que hay otras cosas que también tenemos que averiguar y apoyar a nuestros estudiantes. Y de allí es donde viene la importancia de nuestras llamadas telefónicas que hacemos a los estudiantes, porque no es una llamada que ya fue grabada antemano, sino es una persona que está haciendo ese impacto a ese estudiante o con esa familia. Y en veces esa conversación es sobre tratar de tener los estudiantes que vayan a sus clases, ¿verdad? Y en veces eso quiere decir que no necesariamente necesitan algo del Internet. Puede ser que necesitan un material, unos textos, libros, lápices, quizás cuadernos, cualquier cosa. Y esa ayuda es más individual, ¿verdad? Y comprendemos que durante estos tiempos una cosa no puede ser la solución para todos, sino tenemos que mirar a los estudiantes individualmente. Y allí es donde viene nuestro plan individual de graduación, porque en esta manera tenemos diferentes planes que pueden ayudar a los estudiantes que han sido impactados en diferentes maneras. También la doctora Kimberly Clissold quiere agregar que es bien importante y es bonito también recibir la notificación de los estudiantes o los padres cuando ella recibe un mensaje, un correo electrónico, cualquier cosa que dice el estudiante que tiene algo o algo le preocupa. Entonces esa información nosotros la usamos para mejorar nuestros servicios a nuestros estudiantes.
And so we have about 4 minutes before our announcements, and then we can continue all night if you like to. I think it's important for us to move into, again, what is it looking like in regards to students? What are they, I guess at this moment, what are they willing to do to get that high school diploma? I think one of the pieces that I want you to think about as we start going into this short break of a couple of minutes is how are you addressing those two groups that I'm thinking about at the moment? One is the mental health of the students who have basically given up. They're dealing with a lot of anxiety, depression. There's no point. I'm really glad that the vaccine has arrived to Sonoma County now, and that we're going to start, they're going to start administering the first vaccines. The county received something like 4,000, and then Moderna will send a few thousand in the next week. How are you all giving the students hope in order to make sure that they are going to be successful and again, pursue that high school diploma? That's one. And then the other one that I think it's important for you all to address is how do you support those students, especially the senior students, the juniors who are old enough to stay home, but they're basically parenting and co-teaching their younger siblings. So the 7-year-old over there has a question about math, but the student is supposed to be paying attention to algebra or, trig or whatever it is that they have. So as we take this break, I invite you to think about that. And when we come back, we'll continue with that discussion. Entonces, en lo que vamos a hacer nuestros anuncios de las 6 de la tarde, lo que quiero que me digan o que piensen ustedes es dos cosas. ¿Cómo están creando estos programas del punto de qué están haciendo ustedes para apoyar a estudiantes que ya tienen tanta depresión y tanta ansiedad y dicen, ¿sabes qué? Yo ya no voy a hacer nada con esto, con lo de la escuela, y ya voy a enfocarme en otras cosas, ya no quiero saber más acerca del diploma. Y al mismo tiempo, y esto es porque una vez más tienen ansiedad, depresión, todo ese tipo de cosas, Pero al mismo tiempo, la pregunta también es, ¿cómo le hacen ustedes para apoyar a ese estudiante, esa estudiante, quien en realidad está en una situación donde son básicamente estudiantes de preparatoria y también están cuidando a su hermanito o hermanita, donde el niño de 7, 8 años está haciendo matemáticas y necesita ayuda, pero el muchacho, el joven, la jovencita está en este lado y está tratando también de hacer su propia tarea. Entonces, con eso los dejamos. Voy a tocar un poquito de música, porque nada más falta un minuto y regresamos con ustedes.
Okay, well, thank you. Welcome back to all the listeners. So I'll start and then my colleagues will take over with the specifics for the individualized graduation plan. But I think we want to begin, all of us here, I'll speak for all of Santa Rosa City Schools, in thanking our families and our students. We know that parents have taken on more of a role as educators. And we know that students, especially older students, as you were mentioning, have actually become our colleagues supporting their younger siblings. And we know that the strain of worrying about the future, trying to make sure maybe a younger sibling is learning and staying on top of their own education is a lot to juggle. And so as we talk a little bit more in a few minutes, that's why we're trying to invent multiple routes for students to find success after being in school for many years. But I think we just want to start by acknowledging the fact that many households have become the place where education not only happens through a computer, but happens through a brother or a sister or a nephew or a niece or, through a cousin, in helping us, the teachers, get through to and be successful with our students. So I want to give an immense appreciation to our families and our students who are playing that role. We know it's happening, and we thank all of you for that support.
Ok, el director Tim dice que una de las cosas que hemos comprendido es que sabemos que los padres toman un gran papel en ser educadores, ¿verdad? Y que también comprendemos que los estudiantes están ayudando a sus hermanos o hermanas en el mismo hogar. Y también queremos dar la información que nosotros comprendemos que la educación no solamente está ocurriendo en línea o a través del internet, ¿verdad? Pero también que está ocurriendo a través de un hermano o una hermana, cualquier persona en la familia. En veces los padres también están ayudando. So queremos poner eso enfrente de todo porque comprendemos que estas cosas están ocurriendo en los hogares.
And I'll add one more thing and I'll turn it over to my colleagues. And so out of that appreciation for the complexity for families in being able to navigate the COVID-19 pandemic and schooling, we want to have a response to support our seniors that's as grand in scope to some degree as a disruption to school has been, because we greatly care for and love them and want them to be as successful as possible. And we don't want COVID-19 to define their whole life. We don't want it to feel like an endpoint that somehow something's gotten in the way of finishing high school successfully. So I'll let Norma translate that and I'll turn it over to Kim to explain the details.
También queremos apreciar a todos los padres y a los estudiantes y queremos hacerles saber que esta pandemia nos ha hecho comprender que no queremos que esto nos impacte y que tenga un impacto negativo en nuestros estudiantes y nuestras familias. Y por eso es la razón por qué hicimos los diferentes tipos de apoyos para los estudiantes y apoyarlos en su graduación. Y ahora se la paso a la doctora Kimberly Clissold que platique un poquito más sobre eso.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to go ahead and go over the parts of the intervention that we have for our seniors with the individual graduation plan. Now, this plan is only for the class of 2021. So I want to make that really clear. The other thing that I'd like to make really clear is this plan is based on things that we do with our students already, interventions and supports that we already have in place. So what I'd like everybody to do is sort of think of a pyramid in your mind. And the base of the pyramid represents our entire class of 2021. And then I'm going to start kind of talking about how each level of the pyramid, and there's 3 levels that I'll talk about. One is what we call the tier 3 level. That's the base level, all of our seniors. And then there's 2 levels above that. And each of the 2 levels that I'm going to be talking about represent 2 new options for the class of 2021 to give them that hope that they need to be able to graduate. Norma, do you want to try that part? And then I'll go into the details.
Yeah. Ok, la doctora Kimberly quiere darle las gracias al director Tim y también quiere decir de que este plan de intervención estuvo compuesto para los graduantes o los estudiantes que se van a graduar en este mayo que viene de la clase del 2020-21. Y la intervención y los apoyos, queremos que se imaginen un pirámide, ¿verdad? La base del pirámide son los apoyos que reciben todos los estudiantes y el pirámide está separado en 3 diferentes partes. La base del pirámide es donde todos los estudiantes reciben esos apoyos.
So getting back to that picture of the pyramid in your mind, all of our students that are in secondary schools in Santa Rosa City Schools, every year that they're in high school, at the end of the year, generally their counselor will look at how they have done academically. How successful were you? Are you on track to graduate at the end of your 9th grade year, your 10th grade year, your 11th grade year? The 11th grade year is very important because at the end of the 11th grade year, you're setting yourself up for whether or not you're on track to graduate in your senior year. So our counselors work every year to review our senior class at the beginning of the year so that they can advise their students as to what classes they need to make up, what classes they might need to take so that they can meet their post-secondary plans. Is it to go to a university? Is it to go to a college? Is it to go to the military? Is it to go to the JC? Are you looking at a technical school? Are you going to go train with your uncle who owns a business? Whatever your plans might be, the counselors work with the students to make sure that their plan is going to work for them. Now, what we have found out is plans really do need to be flexible because of COVID, because of the wildfires, because of everything that everybody is going through, and just the stress and the anxiety. So that is our first level of intervention that we do with all of our students.
Ok, la doctora Kimberly Clissold dice que el primer nivel, la base del pirámide, ¿verdad? Llevándonos para atrás a esa imagen del pirámide. En la base son los apoyos y las intervenciones que damos a todos nuestros estudiantes. So, todos los estudiantes cuando están en su último grado, los consejeros revisan y repasan su récord académico, ¿verdad? Y tratan de ayudarles en hacer y tomar los próximos pasos, dependiendo en cuáles son los planes del estudiante después de la high school. So eso viene en diferentes ayudas, ¿verdad? Si el estudiante va a entrar a un colegio como Santa Rosa JC, o si va a entrar a una universidad de 4 años, o si va a entrar al trabajo, o si va a trabajar en un trabajo de la familia, ¿verdad? So, todas esas cosas se toman en cuenta para todos los estudiantes en su último año. Y estos son los apoyos que damos a todos los estudiantes y es la base del pirámide.
So as we're looking at that intervention, my vice principal, Andre Korean, and I realized that many of our students were not on track to graduate and possibly would fall off track to graduate because of distance learning, because of COVID, because of wildfires, just all these things that students have gone through. So we started thinking about an intervention based on the requirements that students need to have when they exit high school. So we looked at, for students who are on track to graduate as of right now, and their goal is to go to a UC or a CSU, the minimum requirements are 180 credits. Well, in Santa Rosa City Schools, you have to have 220 to graduate. So if we could create some flexibility for students and look at their transcripts individually, do a tier 2 intervention, Because let's say there is a student who is having tremendous anxiety, is struggling, is impacted at home, whatever the reason might be, we don't want to take them off track to go to a UC or a CSU. And could we possibly look at how many of those requirements they have already met and then lessen their course load going into the spring? So they could really just focus on what they have to do and not do anything extra. So what we've done at the tier 2 level is if a student has met the 180 requirements that a California State University or a UC requires, then we will work with them to go ahead and let them lessen their schedule so that they don't have to take additional classes to make the Santa Rosa City Schools 220 credit requirement. So that's the tier 2 support.
Ok, la doctora Kimberly Clissold dice que nuestros planes tienen que ser flexibles y mirando los datos de información de este año, miramos que muchos de nuestros graduantes o estudiantes en el último año que no estaban en un plan para graduarse, y esto puede ser por la pandemia del COVID o los incendios, ¿verdad? Y estuvimos mirando cuáles son los requisitos y cómo son diferentes, ¿verdad? Y notamos que los requisitos para entrar a una universidad son diferentes de los que tenemos para nuestra graduación. So, en el próximo paso, llevándonos para atrás al pirámide, ya acabamos de platicar sobre la base, ¿verdad? La segunda parte o la parte en medio del pirámide, que le llamamos Tier 2, platica sobre la diferencia de entrar, de graduarse, ¿verdad? Con créditos, con 180 créditos, ¿verdad? So, eso quiere decir que si el estudiante está haciendo todos los requisitos para entrar a la universidad, entonces podemos ser más flexible con sus clases y su horario para que no tengan un horario lleno de clases.
Y nada más para clarificar, la diferencia que usted estaba mencionando es que usualmente, legalmente, con 180 créditos se pueden graduar, pero el distrito requiere 220 créditos y esa flexibilidad sería para que no tengan que hacer los 220 si ya están teniendo dificultades y puedan hacer todavía los 180. No quisiera que fuera un malentendido de que podrán graduarse con menos de 180. Just wanted to clarify that you had mentioned that 180 is what the minimum requirement for graduation, but typically students are required to do 220 to graduate, and that's the flexibility between 180 and 220.
Correct. Now, the last tier, the highest level of intervention is reserved for our students who are at this point more significantly behind in credits. They don't have post-secondary plans to go to a college or a university. And really the concern that we have with these students is that they won't graduate, may drop out, and have already given up. So the highest level of intervention that we have allows us to look at the minimum requirements in the state of California to award a high school diploma, which is 130 credits. So we would look at the work that a student has already done in relation to that minimum requirements, which is 130, and work out a plan for them to help them get a high school diploma with Santa Rosa City Schools. So once again, that would be below the traditional 220 credits that Santa Rosa City Schools has required. And this, once again, is because of the severity and the need for an intervention that is very demonstrative and very big. It's a big gesture that we're making because we want students to key in that they have a choice, that we want to work with them, that they have these options. And so that highest level of intervention is for students who may not graduate and might possibly have already given up. Now, because this is an intervention and we believe that we need to support students, once again, I want to stress, this is not about cutting their high school career short. It's not about letting them off the hook. It is all about support. For the students that are taking the 130 credit option, those students will also be given an additional intervention of a life learner project course, whereby we're going to support them with a plan and some real world skills that will sort of offer up support and help. It will be a requirement. Some of the things that we're going to be looking to do with students is to make sure that they've completed their FAFSA, that they understand their options for going to the junior college, that they are apprised of options to go into technical schools, that they have preparation on how to do a resume and complete a job application. And we really want to make sure that students, when they leave, don't feel like we've pushed them out, that we've supported them, that we've heard them, and that we're ready and willing to make sure that this is something they can do.
Ok, la doctora Kimberly Clissold quiere recordar que estos planes son porque realmente tenemos preocupación para nuestros estudiantes, ¿verdad? Y queremos trabajar con ellos. El próximo nivel del pirámide es la parte más arriba y es la intervención más intensa, ¿verdad? Y este plan tiene que ver con un requisito de los créditos, de 130 créditos que se requieren del Estado para un diploma de la high school. Y este es un plan que es para estudiantes que quizás no están interesados en continuar su educación en una universidad, ¿verdad? Pero también este plan da la información a los estudiantes y van a tener bien claro que tienen opciones, ¿verdad? Una de ellas es de que van a aprender cómo hacer resúmenes, cómo hacer aplicaciones para trabajos y cuáles son las opciones para entrar a los colegios. Otra vez, no queremos o queremos que los padres y las familias entiendan que no queremos empujarlos a que se salgan rápido de la high school, pero sino queremos mejor trabajar con ellos para que ellos logren sus metas y tener un plan con ellos, ¿verdad?
Rafael, when is the next official break?
We're it. This is you. You're it until 7, unless you want to give me a couple of minutes to. I think this is important. I think that
I think so too.
again,
yeah,
people need to understand this.
Yeah, I wanted to add 3 things if it's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure, these are common questions, so I'll take one at a time. And Norma, then you could kind of follow each one. So the first question that we often get is, who will reach out to my student if they need this intervention? And the answer to that first question is, as Dr. Clissold explained, counselors are carefully looking over their and preparing. Some have already even started contacting this week, but really preparing for clear contact and discussions upon the return from winter break on January 5th. We come back on Tuesday, January 5th. So a counselor will reach out. And if for any reason, a student who was on track for a 220 credit diploma, if anything should come up or an unusual circumstance should arise, families and students, of course, are always welcome to contact their counselor to initiate a discussion if something is missed. But we will be doing the outreach to begin with the students who need the highest level of intervention at the potential 130 credit diploma right away as we get back from the winter break.
El director del distrito, Tim Zalunardo, quiere decir de que él quiere platicar sobre unos puntos importantes que quizás nuestras familias o estudiantes tengan preocupaciones, ¿verdad? El primer de ellos es de con quién podemos platicar o a quién podemos contactar para tener más información sobre este plan. Y aquí es donde deben de saber que los consejeros de todas las preparatorias van a hacer ese primer contacto, ¿ok? Y van a mirar a todos los estudiantes de las escuelas y ellos se van a encargar de comunicarse con los estudiantes y las familias. Y eso, el plan de eso es para iniciar y quizás unos consejeros ya comenzaron a hacer esos contactos, ¿verdad? Pero el plan es de que ellos comenzaran cuando regresemos de nuestro descanso del invierno el 5 de enero.
The second common question that we have received so far is, should a parent or a student feel bad if they get contacted for this intervention? Is there some kind of sense of like, oh, I just didn't, like I let everybody down? And our answer is a resounding no. We are more than happy to support you with this. There is not 1 ounce of kind of blame or shame, and no one expected the disruption of not only schools, but our economy and really the whole world's kind of industries to be so severe. And so if we contact a family, no parent or student should feel in any way bad having this conversation or any sense of like letting themselves down. We believe that this intervention is needed to support them because we believe in them.
El segundo punto importante que nos da el director Tim es de que la pregunta es de que si se debe de sentir mal el estudiante o la familia cuando se comunique la escuela con ellos y dar estas opciones. Y la respuesta a esto es de que no se deben de sentir mal, ¿verdad? No debe de haber ninguna preocupación o ningún tipo de vergüenza ni nada de así, porque durante estos tiempos estamos en unos tiempos muy difíciles, ¿verdad? Y no solamente nosotros, pero este es un tiempo difícil mundialmente. So, esta es la manera que nosotros podemos comunicarnos con las familias y los estudiantes y decir que estamos en su lado, ¿verdad? Y queremos apoyarlos y queremos que alcancen esas metas. So, no se vayan a sentir mal y no es nada de que deben de avergonzarse, sino es algo para ayudarlos.
The third important question that we've gotten is, if my student is able to achieve, the 220 credit diploma, or they're able to achieve, a fairly high level of credit still, what should I tell them? And the answer is we want our students to achieve as many credits as possible to the 220, because we believe that if they can have more academic experiences, they'll be prepared for any choice after high school. But we also realize the reality in COVID is that more support than in a typical year is absolutely necessary. So students should definitely try to achieve as many of the 220 credits as they can. We believe it will support them moving forward, but we also understand that we might have to intervene to provide more support, and we're willing to do so if that's needed.
Ok, el director Tim dice que la tercera pregunta o punto es sobre los créditos de 220. Y la pregunta es que si yo quiero que mi estudiante o mi estudiante quiere lograr los 220 créditos, que si eso es posible. Y la respuesta es de que es posible lograr la capacidad de que el estudiante tenga. So, nosotros queremos que ellos tengan los más créditos posibles, pero también la realidad es que es la capacidad de ellos, ¿verdad? Y vamos a trabajar con eso.
And so the final part of that third question is that, how will colleges look at this? Should my student try to achieve as many credits as possible to 220? And so the answer is, if the student is on track for a CSU or a UC and wants to be as competitive as possible, right now, the information that we have from colleges is that they are still keeping an eye on the student's schedule and how rigorous the schedule was for the student. So if the student is going to remove any classes but still be on track for the CSU or UC eligibility at 180 credits, it could have an impact on their competitiveness. And so we want to be really thoughtful about that. But on the flip side, if a student will get accepted at college but won't go because of the anxiety they experience in the second semester, or they will hit a wall and just shut down at some point, or they can't assist their family in a fundamental way, then we want the student to seriously consider the intervention and the support. So it's a balance of understanding there could be some competitive repercussions for our CSU and UC systems if a student reduces their schedule but there's no use to anyone if the family and the student hit a wall and can't function, or something causes them to really struggle emotionally, or socially, or intellectually. So we just want people to be aware of that. Thank you.
El otro punto importante que dice el director Tim es de que si los colegios, las universidades de CSU o UC van a tomar en cuenta los planes de los estudiantes. Y la respuesta a esa es de que actualmente la información que tenemos es de que ellos van a mirar qué difícil son las clases que estuvieron tomando los estudiantes, ¿verdad? Y quizás puede tener un impacto, pero todo se trata sobre tratar de tener un horario balanceado para el estudiante. Y eso es algo que también se va a tomar en cuenta.
And so it sounds to me like, based on what you described, you're definitely going to do your best to reach out to all these students, try to get them to reconnect with the schools, try to, again, complete this goal, which is, again, for many of our immigrant families specifically, sometimes this is the first student that is going to get a high school diploma in the whole family. And that's why celebrations are so important at the end of the school year. And I know that that's why it was so difficult for a lot of families that now have their students at the JC, at the universities, because they couldn't go through graduation. As we have always said, for the immigrant family, when the child gets the diploma, the family gets the diploma, because it's a group project. So I'm really hopeful that students and families who are listening to this information will reconnect, and that, again, if you are reaching out starting January 5th, that, again, these families will pick up the phone and will say, how can we work with you? Because we want that, our student to do this. And just a reminder to individuals in the state of California, based on the number of students that not only don't graduate from high school, but don't go to college, we are looking by 2025 at a 1.6 million worker shortage just in California, because, again, they give up, they are not feeling ready to continue with high school, much less college. And for my part at Santa Rosa Junior College, again, any student who's graduating and you're struggling with the CalDream Act, if you're undocumented, or FAFSA, please reach out to my office at 707-527-4585, and let's get you started with Counseling 270, which is the orientation class for college, and then we'll get you started with financial aid and everything else. Entonces, es importante toda la información que nos están dando este día de hoy acerca de cómo están tratando de apoyar a las estudiantes para que se gradúen. La graduación es algo muy importante para nuestra comunidad migrante, ya que cuando un estudiante se gradúa, no es él o la estudiante quien se está graduando solamente, pero es toda la familia, porque para muchas familias este primer estudiante, esta primera estudiante es la primera persona en obtener la preparatoria. Y recordándoles que si hay algún estudiante o familia que quiere que su estudiante venga a Santa Rosa Junior College, siéntanse con confianza de llamar al 707-527-4585, 707-527-4585, y estoy listo para asistirles por la aplicación de CalDream Act, si son indocumentados e indocumentadas, o el FAFSA. Se tiene que hacer ambas aplicaciones antes del 2 de marzo. And I'm glad that you are bringing up, I know that Dr. Clissold, you mentioned that you're going to be working with students on live projects for the 130 graduation. I just want to, I don't know how soon you're going to work on that or any of the stuff, but just so you know, I'm working on career night. And one of the things that I hope to release on April 6th, I believe it is maybe April 7th, I'll send the flyer out soon, but I'm hoping to release at least 100 videos of different professionals in English, and at least the same in Spanish, in Chinese, and several other languages. At some point, just so you know, you're going to be getting an invite to make your own videos, because it is essential that students see themselves not just, again, as doctors and lawyers, which is a lot of the mentality that I myself am guilty of promoting all the time. But as a society, we don't just need doctors and lawyers. We need the people who are going to be chefs at the restaurants and the people who are, fixing our vehicles and so on and so forth. And a lot of kids, I think, maybe often from home also they have heard, you have to become a doctor, you have to become a nurse. But I know a kid that works at a dealership fixing vehicles, and he literally makes more than 1.5 times what I make. And I'm grateful that he's been successful. And he only took 3 semesters of college. So again, we need to continue to tell those students who need it the most that they can be successful without having to get a master's degree, a bachelor's degree, so on and so forth. So again, I look forward to that collaboration, at least for you to tell the students that that collection of videos will be made available to all of them. Entonces, aquí una de las cosas que mencionaba usted, doctora Kimberly Klessel, es de que con las estudiantes que van a graduarse con 130 créditos, de que ustedes van a trabajar para empujarles a que vean la posibilidad de agarrar carreras que tal vez no requieren una maestría o un doctorado. Y yo estoy trabajando en la noche de carreras que va a salir a la comunidad, sea el 6 o 7 de abril. Voy a checar el volante y les voy a traer la información después. Pero voy a tener, espero, por lo menos 100 carreras que vamos a promover en inglés y en otros idiomas, porque yo también soy culpable de promover la idea de que ve a agarrar tu doctorado, vuélvete un abogado, que también es un doctorado, vuélvete esto, lo otro. Necesitamos gente que va a cocinar en los restaurantes, necesitamos gente que va a componer carros, necesitamos gente que va a hacer todo este tipo de trabajo. Entonces, mi idea aquí es de proporcionar esta información para que escojan algo y no sean forzadas a hacer un trabajo, una carrera que no quieren. Entonces, espero poder colaborar con ustedes para hacer esto accesible a la comunidad. Is there anything else that you would like to share? I would say in the next 5 minutes, only because I do need to talk about DACA at the end of the show. ¿Hay algo que quieran compartir?
I think I could sum it up very clear and very succinctly. Every single member of the class of 2021, we have a support for you. Don't give up. Get in contact with your school. If you thought that there was no way you were going to graduate because you were so far behind in credits, reach out. We're going to work with you. Counselors are really busy. They're looking at transcripts, but we have other staff, our assistant principals. We'll be there. We'll start working with you so that we can assure you that we don't want you to give up, that we want you to do your best. And where you go from there is going to be up to you. Everybody's path is different. Everybody's abilities are different. My path, Rafael, your path, Tim, your path, Norma, your path, all different paths. And we want to help our students find their path. And that's really the heart of what this intervention is about.
La doctora Kimberly Klessel tiene unas ideas finales y quiere decirles y anunciarles a todos los miembros de la clase del 2020-21 de que tenemos un plan para cada uno de ustedes, que no se den por vencidos. Si tenían en mente que quizás no podrían graduarse, que por favor comuníquense con nosotros. Hay un plan para cada uno de ustedes y estamos aquí para ayudarlos, sus consejeros, sus asistentes directores, y queremos verlos que tengan éxito, ¿verdad? Y el camino que tomó la doctora Klessel, el camino que tomó el director Tim, el camino que tomó el doctor Vázquez y yo también, fueron diferentes, ¿verdad? Pero para todos ustedes hay un camino y un plan. So, no se den por vencidos, estamos aquí para apoyarlos.
thank you again for taking the time and being here with me this afternoon. And again, sharing this important program with the community. And I look forward to our next conversation. And of course, when it's graduation time, I think we, COVID, we don't know how far we're going to be. Maybe if enough people get the vaccine, maybe you can move the graduation a little bit later into the summer if needed. But I think that I look forward to that big celebration at all of your schools because our community needs more positive stories. So I also want to invite you all, if you have students who are going to graduate this year and they want to come over on the radio and share their stories, I'm more than happy to accommodate that during the spring semester. Maybe every couple of weeks as part of this, I'm willing to offer 10, 15 minutes because they need to motivate each other. And I look forward to that in the next few months. Entonces, quiero agradecerles a ustedes por tomarse el tiempo, estar aquí conmigo esta tarde con nuestra comunidad y espero que podamos juntarnos en un futuro para la celebración de esta graduación y también invitarles a ustedes, ofrecerles la oportunidad, si hay estudiantes que ustedes quieren promover aquí en la radio porque se van a graduar y quieren contar sus historias para promover a que otras estudiantes no se venzan, el espacio está abierto en este programa para poder hacer eso. With that, again, I want to thank you for your time. Gracias.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Gracias por tenernos.
Gracias. Bye bye.
Adios.
Adios.
Entonces, ahí tenemos esa grabación, o esa información, disculpen, de nuestros colegas del distrito escolar.